Welcome to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast, brought to you by Ibanez Guitars and Basses. Ibanez strives to make high-quality, cutting-edge musical instruments that any musician can afford and enjoy. Visit Ibanez.com for more info. And now your hosts, Joey Sturgis, Joel Wanasek, and EYAL Levy.
Hey everybody, how you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Fantastic.
Terrible.
Terrible.
Just kidding.
With us today, we have Zakk Cervini and Matt Pauling. How you guys doing?
Great, how are you?
Doing good, doing good. For those of you who might not know, Zakk and Matt are the right-hand men for John Feldman. Is that right?
That is correct. Correct.
That is awesome. I have to say, how the hell do you go to sleep with those choruses stuck in your head all day?
It's rough, man. There's a lot of them. A lot of choruses. It's all about the chorus.
How long have you guys been working with him?
I've been with John for about 2.5 years. And Matt's, how long you been there? Like year and a half?
Yeah, 1.5 years.
Okay, because I seem to remember, Zakk, when you kind of got that gig, I think that I remember you getting it, and since then I just have noticed that you've just done awesome thing after awesome thing after awesome thing after awesome thing, so congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long road, but honestly it's been pretty quick, I feel like, because like I've only been in the industry for like 2.5 years. So
I was about to say, I don't like, you're pretty young for having gotten a gig like that and kept it, so that's pretty cool. Congrats. How did you go about landing that?
Okay, so pretty much, I mean, I've been recording bands since I was like 14 years old. My parents, like, my mom's like a really honest person, and she's just like the first person to tell me like anything I do sucks. And like growing up, I was terrible at sports, I was terrible at pretty much everything, but like I picked up a guitar and could just kind of play it, and she was like, bought me a guitar, and then, like, I was messing around with Audacity. You guys remember Audacity?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
like that. Yeah, it was the greatest. And that was in, like, 7th grade. I was really young, and I recorded a couple songs, and, like, I just, like, loved doing it. So my mom bought me, like, a MacBook, and when I was a freshman in high school, I recorded my first band. I got, like, a little M-Audio interface with 2 inputs, and I like, really ghetto-rigged this thing together. And, then I just kept, like, recording a bunch of bands through high school, and when I was 17, I produced like my first signed band, I guess. They were this band that was on Artery, and like it was a really small thing for me, but like it was really cool, and I was just like hustling, while other kids were like at parties and stuff. I was just always like in my bedroom, just like recording like in my basement or whatever, and I just like worked super hard, and so when I graduated high school, I got accepted into a college called Drexel, which at the time had like a really good program for recording and producing and stuff. But I'm a hustler, and I hit up just tons of people who were out of my reach all the time. Like I was just like messaging tons of people, and no one would ever really hit me back. But one day I messaged Will Putney, who at the time was working for Machine, who was my favorite producer, like, ever. Like I looked up to him like throughout all of high school, and Will was like, yeah, you should come down to the studio. And I was 18 at the time. I was a freshman in college, and so I went down to the studio, and I just hit it off with Will and Machine instantly, and they were like, you should intern here. I was like, cool. So I interned there, and Machine like really like took me under his wing, and like almost like a parent. He just like broke me into the industry and just like showed me just like not even like on the technical side of things, but just like how to deal with people and like how to work with bands, like that kind of stuff, which I feel is like equally, if not more important than like the technical aspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I worked with them for like about 1.5 years as like their kind of like assistant guy, and like I would track vocals, I would track bass, I would edit, I would like do mix notes, I would do like tons of small stuff, and I actually produced a couple of bands on my own. Like Machine would be going away, and he'd be like, yeah, the studio is free, so do whatever you want. And so I would just be like, okay, cool. So I would just go out and find a band that I loved and bring them in and make a record. And so we had a really great relationship, and then Machine decided that he wanted to move to Austin, Texas, and I wanted to move to Los Angeles, California. So he sent an email to John Feldman just telling him that he had this. So at the time I was kind of like machines engineer, but he sent an email to John that was like, I got a kid who would like to intern for you. So I moved to LA and I just kind of like started over like as an intern. This was 2.5 years ago.
So were you getting paid as an intern or a free intern? So you just moved across country and did it for free anyways.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
You got to take the financial hit a lot of times, like to get into things like this. But the thing is, when I got to Feldman's, his engineer at the time was kind of like over the job. Like he just like they weren't really a good match, and he wasn't feeling it. So he put a lot of the work onto me, which is great. So I wasn't getting paid, but I was doing a ton of the work and like a ton of the productions and stuff. And it was like, I was coming from the metal world where I was used to just like bass, guitars, and drums and stuff, and I was just being thrown into this world of like all these crazy instruments and like crazy different sounds and crazy songs and all these different styles and stuff. And it was really cool and really fun, but also like really difficult. So I started interning in June of 2013, and his engineer left in October of 2013, and that was right before we started to do a record with The Used. And John needed an engineer, and I was just like, I'll do it.
Yeah, you were there.
So I mean, I made that record, and I went on to make like tons of different records. And there was a time a couple months later we did an album with a band called Stick to Your Guns, where John had like a medical emergency and he had to get this crazy surgery that put him out for like a month. So I produced the entire Stick to Your Guns record on my own, and just, you know, did that one front to back pretty much just by myself, like editing, like no help, nothing. And that just kind of proved to John like what I could do, I think, even though it was like a metal record. And so ever since then, you know, our relationship has kind of grown to where I'm not really like his employee, but it's more like we work together. And now like it's just grown over the years where I co-write tons of songs with John. You know, I mix everything we do, and we like co-produce things together, which I think is really cool.
That's like the perfect example of how to do it, I think.
Cool.
Yeah. It's pretty rare.
How does Matt come into all of this?
Matt, you want to tell a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so I come from more of a touring background. So I grew up in Orange County, California, and I just started playing guitar when I was 14. My dad was like, yo, you need to play football. And I played one season, and I was just like, yo, fuck this, dude. I got to do something else. So I picked up a guitar and just taught myself how to play, and then started a band, you know. And from the beginning, we were just playing hardcore, you know, like my favorite band was like Hatebreed and In Flames and like, you know, just like hardcore shit. And we'd have shows in our like friends' parents' garages at like 4 p.m. before they got home. And, you know, so I come from that whole kind of background of just like DIY, just, you know, hardcore punk rock mentality. And and then when I was 18, my little brother actually brought this demo I made to his friend's dad, and he owned this label called Science Records. And he called me instantly, and my band, The Confession, got signed. And then we ended up touring with like Avenged Sevenfold, Bullet for My Valentine, Megadeth, and like all these crazy bands.
Just like that, out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was like instant. It was pretty gnarly. Like I can't explain. Like I feel like I got super lucky.
Both of you guys have an insane story.
Yeah. So and then from there, you know, we broke up in 2008, and then that's like when I.
Didn't Matt produced your record too, right?
Yeah, Matt Shadows from Avenged produced our album alongside with he co-produced it with this dude Fred Archambault, who just did the new Atreyu record.
He was actually on.
He was just
last week.
Oh, cool! Yeah, Fred's my boy.
No way.
Yeah, Fred's
yeah, he's
so
like
cool.
the nicest sweetheart ever. And but before that, after The Confession broke up in 2008, that's when I was like, okay, dude, I got to get on, you know, Pro Tools and learn this whole thing. And so that was like my whole journey into the world of recording. And the dude that recorded The Confession's first EP, his name is Paul Miner. He played bass in a band called Death by Stereo. And so after I learned Pro Tools for a little bit, I hit him up and was like, yo, you have any like openings at your studio? And he's like, I don't really need anybody, but I'll teach you how to use the studio, and you can come in and like I'll show you some stuff, and like you can bring in bands whenever you want, and we'll we'll go from there. And so I kind of learned from him a little bit, but mostly I just taught myself because he just kind of, set me up and then was like, yo, you're free to fly, And so after I learned a little bit from Paul, I was running this little studio in Orange, California. And so I got a few bands in there. And then after that, I got an opportunity to join a band with Brandon Saller from Atreyu called Hell or High Water. And then we ended up touring for like 3 years. We did some cool gigs. We did the Uproar tour and all that stuff, and in 2011. And then, the band was just kind of like stalemate. It wasn't really doing much. It was almost kind of regressing a little bit. And Brandon was talking about getting back with Atreyu and stuff. So I was like, yo, I got to jump ship. And I ended up, reaching out to a few people. And I talked to this dude, Sean Akavon. He's the Used tour manager, and he was like, yo, what are you doing? What are you up to? And I was like, I'm looking for a gig in a studio. And he's like, let me hit up Feldman for you. So he just hooked me up with an intro email, and Feldy was just like, yeah, cruise in. So I kind of started like how Zakk did, just from ground zero. I went in unpaid internship and stuck it out for like a few months, and then he was like, yo. And then one of the other engineers, he ended up leaving. And so,
yeah, it's like John's always had like one engineer guy. And then when I became his engineer, we found another person because like the workload was just like insane. So we had 2 people, but that guy just didn't really work out. So he left and yeah, Matt just kind of, sorry to interrupt you, Matt, but Matt just kind of stepped in there.
So how many people hit him up for internships generally? Is it nonstop flood?
Yeah, well, he has kind of like a separate email that all of those go to that our interns and our assistants like go through. So I think it's a lot.
What's the vetting process like?
Basically, you can't be a 5 Seconds of Summer fan. That's like the first credential. Our interns, just to be honest with you, we're looking for interns to help with like menial tasks. A lot of the times, it's like a lot of food runs, a lot of coffee runs, like that kind of stuff. And then if they really are into like editing and stuff, we get them started on that sometimes. It's like, to become an intern, pretty much you just need to be like really cool and able to take, to be frank, just be able to need to take like a lot of shit. Pretty much. A lot of people don't last more than like a week.
Every guy that we've had on who has made it in the LA scene has said the exact same thing, which is their internship started with a bunch of menial tasks, and they were the best at those tasks, like getting the food order right. And
yes,
that's
exactly
what got them the opportunity to try their editing on stuff. And then when they did that right for long enough, it eventually equaled work.
Exactly. Like the thing with our interns is if you really have to do a lot to make an impression on John. Like you have to be really good with like getting the food orders right. Like, but you just have to go like above and beyond in ways that you have to figure out how to do on your own because there's no instructions. And basically, it'll be like you'll intern for however long unpaid and take a lot of hard things, and then you could not hear from John for a year, and then a year from now, someone will call John and be like, I need someone to do this, and John will ask Matt or me, like, who do we know that would be a good fit for this job? And we'll be like, oh, this person was an incredible intern, and so then we'll hit them up, and more often than not, they're down for that.
What gets someone instantly deleted?
Lying, stealing.
Oh, I mean from like the point where you get the email. Like what? Like is there like something about the emails that make them like get to the top of the pile? I guess.
Those emails. Okay. Basically, a lot of people send in like a lot of resumes and stuff, and we have an awesome assistant named Allie, and she's really good at like going through this kind of stuff. So basically, every email that we get that seems like it could be a good fit, like I think it's really cool when like people have like go to college or have like school experience or something, or if they have like a SoundCloud and I listen to it and I'm like, whoa, these tracks are like super cool because we just get a lot of kids who like, I'll check out their SoundCloud and, you know, nothing sounds very good or anything. And then like we meet them and they just don't seem like a very driven person. Our assistant, when we're looking for an intern, she basically like tries to meet every person possible in the emails. And she just tries to figure out like who's like the most driven person out of all of them. And who's just like has a great attitude and like just always smiling genuinely and just always like, and just like is stoked to go get coffee, you know, which people are.
That's a great point. Because I'll give you an example. We're having the same problem right now at my building. I got a guy across the hall and, you know, we have separate businesses, but we work together on a lot of stuff. And he's trying to find a new building intern. And he's had like 4 or 5 guys out of here. And he's got these 2 guys that are pretty lazy in here right now. And they just like, they come in, they talk really big. They say, yeah, I can do this and I can do that. And they're nodding your head when you're telling them how tough it's going to be and how they need to stick it out. And then when it comes time to brass tacks, like they don't show up on time. They don't care. You know, they don't take out the garbage without being prompted. And even after prompted, they argue like they're too high above doing something like that. And you're just like, seriously?
Yeah. Exactly. It's, yeah, they have to be stoked to do everything. And we have kids that are, and it's great. When they just do things without being asked, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, just question for you. You said that you came from a metal background and had to learn all this other stuff. And I remember talking to you online about the amount of programming that you had to learn how to do. How did you go about mastering that stuff? Did you just jump right in? And how did you go about getting better at it so that I guess maybe he wouldn't notice that you didn't know it yet?
Okay, well, John pretty much just like threw me into it, and I was like, yeah, I can do this. And, you know, like I had like no idea what I was doing. And, you know, I sent him a couple tracks, and he quickly found out that I had no idea what I was doing. But he just would help me. So, you know, we have a lot of like, we have a lot of go-to sounds and stuff, like a lot of starting points in terms of like, I don't know, whether it be like a synth patch or like a mix setting or anything. We have a lot of starting points that we tweak from. And then we also go off and just like experiment and do tons of like crazy unique stuff all the time. So basically the dynamic that I have when I work with John, which is really cool, like say I'm like, so he'll have like a song idea, whether it be like a melody or like a chord progression, and he'll just like kind of hum it and then send Matt and me a voice memo and be like, make this sound like The Police meets Taylor Swift in 2016. And we're like, cool. And so like we build up a track and then we send him that track, and then he just sends us like hundreds and hundreds of voice memos just being like, change this kick sound, like make this piano sound expand after the gunfight, like preset 3, and like we just like communicate through like voice memos, and like he just like tells us like how to refine stuff and everything. And honestly, I think just learning the programming just took like, I've probably produced like 500 or 600 songs since I've been with John that are all over like the genre spectrum, like everything. And it just comes from like doing it and like failing and like trying it again pretty much.
I think that it's important to be willing to fail at this stuff. It's the only way you'll get better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no matter how successful you are, you're going to fail. Like
another thing that I've learned from working with John, like the dynamic is that you can't be precious about anything. You know, you can love what you're doing, but it has to constantly evolve and that painful growth, you know, like him being like, dude, this sucks. And you just spent like, 18 hours on it and you stayed up all night. And then he crushes you. And then I learned after a while that you have to just be like, okay, cool, I'm learning, I'm growing, and this is something that you have to deal with as a songwriter, an engineer, anybody trying to do music. So I think that's important.
I think it's a numbers game, man. Like the more you do, the more garbage you're going to put out, but also the more good stuff you'll put out. So it's just, it's
That's
just a matter
true.
of getting through the garbage to get to the good stuff.
Exactly.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, we do a lot of things.
So let's talk about those starting points you mentioned. Where do those come from? Are they like you got something awesome on one record, and so it's like, yeah, that worked, we'll use that? Or is it stuff, okay, so it's not stuff you just do in a vacuum?
No, it's like things that John's just like built up over years and years and years that he's just like, I love this and I'm going to do this on every record. Like, you know, he's been producing records for like 15 years or so, and like he's just has like so many little things along the way that he's just like, I love this EQ on a kick drum, or like I love this gate on a snare drum, and like we're always going to use this, and like I don't see a reason to change this. It's things like that.
Yeah, I had a question. I was wondering if you guys have a permanent setup or anything, and like how much of your rig is analog versus digital, but you kind of answered it inadvertently by telling me that you guys have like, are they like templates kind of, or
it's just like mix settings. Like I'll just like go to like a mix that's like kind of similar to the song that I'm mixing. Like I have different styles of mixing. Like, I mean, the two types of songs that I look at mixing are like, we're a very drum centric studio, and I look at like live drums versus programmed drums. And when I say programmed drums, I don't mean like programmed real drums. I mean like pop programmed drums. We always tend to center the mix around the drums, like at John's, and like I have like a live drum starting point that I go from all the time, and then when I'm programming drums, I have like a programmed drum starting point mix setting that I go from as well, and I tweak from there. That's pretty much how I start.
Joey, isn't that similar to what you do?
Yeah, I kind of have like different starting points for different types of people. For example, like
Right.
you know, like Frankie from Amir kind of has like a way that he likes to layer vocals. So I would have, you know, vocal template that suits him, but
Yeah.
would be completely wrong or different for someone else. So
Right.
it's more of like a time saving thing, and not really like a, you know, it's not like about being lazy or anything like that. It's just, this is how this guy likes to work. So I'm going to condition my gear and set up my situation so that it is the most effective for that kind of workflow.
Yeah. I think it's a time saving thing. And I also think it's a thing where I'm like, I feel like I could spend a week on messing with it and not get something as good as this anyway.
It's tried and true.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a question because I've heard that John, you know, is a little bit of an eccentric guy, and kind of, I think he's a lot like me, and when it comes to being creative, which is, you know, you attack something with, you know, a machine gun basically. How do you guys, if that's true, and tell me if it is or not, but if it is true, how do you guys actually deal with that? How do you keep up with him, and do you find it hard keeping up with him?
Oh yeah, it's so hard to keep up with him. John, I mean, and I personally just think John's like the greatest producer in the world. He's incredible at what he does. He's amazing. And his mind is just like all over the place. So like, it's like in any given day, I'm working on like 4 or 5 different things. Like yesterday, I started out my day. I came in 2 days ago. I did a Christmas cover song with this girl Juliet Sims, who's Andy Biersack from Black Veil Bride's girlfriend. So I did a cover with her, and we made it kind of like Tim Burton, 9 Inch Nails-esque. It's really cool. So I did that, and I mixed that yesterday, and then I did 6 or 7 hours of writing with Black Veil Brides, who we're working with right now. And then after that, I produced and mixed a song for a band called Trophy Wives, who's like an up-and-coming like pop punk band from Rhode Island that we're going to start developing, I think. And I think keeping up with John like is just being on your game and just being willing to pull 16-hour days every day and like not sleep, and just like pretty much it's just like that kind of thing. Just you have to be able to like work really hard and like work really smart and just like have the end goal in sight, and just be like, what's going to make John stoked? Because ultimately what's going to make John stoked is what's going to make the world stoked, probably. So you just kind of and just from working for John for so long, I've just like, I know John, and like I know what he likes like a lot, so that makes it way easier. Like when I was starting out, it was like it would take me like a week to do a song, and you know, now we can crank out, you know, like 10 songs a week. So it's like, it's just from working for him for so long and just working so hard. I think that's how we keep up.
Joel's kind of like that with his mixing, man. How many songs a month do you mix?
I've gotten up to about 67, but usually...
Jeez, 67.
Usually, I mean, well, I've definitely had several months where I've cleared like 50, but usually I can do 2 to 5 songs a day. I've even mixed a whole record in like 3 hours, and I mean, it turned out pretty good. It's just having it dialed into that level of perfection.
Well, that record that you're talking about was one session. Every song was like queued up from left to right, so there wasn't like any opening or closing of any sessions and stuff. And
they weren't very picky either, which was great.
Yeah, and you have your system in place to where your assistant can jump in and go this kick, that snare, this guitar tone.
Yeah, literally, when I get a mix from my assistant, he's so badass that like all I have to do is pretty much write automation, maybe flip out a sample and do a little bit of spot EQing. It's not even like, I mean, I don't know, just everything is dialed into the point where it's basically framed. I know what, he designs all the guitar tone stuff for the reamping. We figure out what samples we're going to use. So by the time I hit play, all I have to do is sit there and mix. I don't have to sit there and be like, is this kick triggering right? Or wait, it's this natural drum gated? Or, I don't have to figure any of that crap out. It's great.
Yeah, and I think there should be people listening to this hopefully can start to realize that presets and starting points and things like of that nature are designed to just basically put up with higher amounts of workflow. Now, I think there's two different types of people. You've got your people who are like, and I could be wrong about this, but like Steve Albini is going to sit there and turn knobs and spend hours and days on the sound of certain things. And then there's going to be other guys who want to just get to the point, get the song down, get the idea down, and mess with the sound of it later and use a starting point. And I don't think that either of those methods is wrong or right. It's just a different way of working. And I think different types of music lend themselves to different methods, so some bands who need like more of a unique approach would go with the more hands-on guy who would just start from scratch every time and forget everything he's ever learned and just, mess up and find his way. And then there's other types of music, which I would say John Feldman is in tune with, is the sort of the more poppier approach or the more structured approach where the workload is massive. But at the same time, your hooks are sort of understood. Your song structures are sort of understood, and there's not a lot of like guesswork that needs to go on.
Yeah, just kind of playing off what you said, like in terms of like mixing and starting points, I just think like for me, mixing to me is just making the song have an emotional impact and just like making me feel something. And like it can sound terrible and still make me feel something, like, because maybe that's the way it's supposed to sound. But, like for instance, like I just want to like get the song sounding like good, and so then I could start actually mixing and actually like automating things and like making the chorus hit and everything. Like I always have the fan in mind. Like if I'm mixing a 5 Seconds of Summer song, the girl's just all she's gonna be listening to is like the singers. Like she's just gonna be listening to the vocal, and she's not gonna be emotionally impacted by like the frequency of the hi-hat or something. You know what I mean?
I think that's an amazing point. Allow me to interject, because I think this is the biggest takeaway, at least for working on a large volume of work in a short period of time, is to not focus on things that don't matter. Like the hi-hat sound matters to us because we're audio nerds. But when my mom listens to a song, she hits play and she's like, oh, I love this song, or this song is terrible. She doesn't care about the snare drum if it's 0.5 dB louder and you have a boost at 8K of 0.2 dB with a Q width of 2. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to focus on what matters, and that's vocals, the emotion of the song. Does it feel good? Does it sound like a song? If yes, you're 90% there mixing.
Speaking of vocals, just to illustrate the point of that emotional impact makes more of a difference than technical quality. I remember, Zakk, you told me and some other people a story about recording something on a hill. Can you explain that real quick for everyone who thinks that you can't get good sounds with not the best situation?
Yeah. Well, for every record we do, John's just kind of known for just like going and like taking trips, like we just have like my laptop and we take an M-Box and an SM7 and we'll just go like, that specific time was during the Sleeping with Sirens album. First of all, so there's a song on that album called The Strays, which I think is just like the best song on that album. And John was sitting out by his pool when he wrote that song, and he was like, this song was just like waiting for me here. And John was just sitting there with Kellen, the singer, and he was like, Zakk, like, bring a mic out by the pool's like right next to the studio. And so John was like, just bring a mic out to the pool and it feels really good right here, so we're just going to record the vocals to this song right here. So I brought a Flea 47 out to the pool and recorded it on an M-Box on my laptop, and that's the vocal sound for that. And then we went.
And John was swimming in the pool at the time.
Yes, exactly. He was. Yeah. And then on the 4th of July, we went to the top of. I think it was Mulholland Drive, and we just like watched fireworks and recorded the vocals to a song called "Left Alone." And it's just because it's like a cool experience, and when you listen back to the song, it just makes you smile, kind of. And even though the listener wasn't there, like I feel like some of that just kind of like rubs off on them. Just like it just gives it like a good feeling. And we do tons of that stuff. Like we go to the beach a lot to record and like go surfing and stuff. And yeah, we take a lot of trips and do that kind of stuff, and it's just fun. And you know, I just feel like I once heard an Italian pizza chefs say that the secret to making a good pizza is to just be happy when you make it. And I feel like that's the same case with records.
So nobody who bought the record noticed the M-Box converters?
Nope.
Strange.
You'd be shocked at how much stuff we record on an M-Box.
Actually,
Yeah,
we wouldn't be shocked, but I think a lot of other people would.
Yeah, people would be shocked.
I'm going to go leave a YouTube comment now like, oh, it sounds like it was done on an M-Box.
What do you guys use back at the studio for converters?
It's the 192s.
Yeah, we just use the 192s. It's so weird. I know the gear that we use, but I'm like such like not a gearhead. Like when it comes to gear, I feel like an idiot. Like when people start like talking about gear and stuff. Because like half the time I'm just like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Like I just kind of like nod and smile. I know the equipment that we use really well, but like I don't know the equipment that we don't use. So
well, let's talk about what you guys have going on there.
So a huge part to our sound is we have an X-Logic SSL 9000 bus compressor. And we set it to the fastest release and the slowest attack, and we never change the settings, and that's used on the 2-bus of every mix that we do. And it's super aggressive compression like that because that's what John likes, but he likes to hit that thing at like 4 to 5 dB on the master bus. And I'll try to like sneak and like back off of it because I think it's like a little too extreme sometimes, but that's a huge part of our sound is that across the stereo bus. And another huge part of our sound is the soft tube FET compressor. I'd say I use that on like 90% of vocals, just because I think that to me that's the plugin that it just like that just does it for me. I don't know. I've tried like a million things, and that plugin, just like the way it compresses the vocal, just like really like gets all the nuances out and everything. And the other 10% of the time I use if that doesn't work, or if it's like a not super in your face song or something, like a ballad or something, I'll use like a UAD LA2A or something on the vocal. But yeah, the SSL compressor and that FET compressor are both like a huge part of our sound. We use the FET compressor on the drum bus too, like in parallel. So like on our drum bus, we just have that soft tube FET compressor, and we just adjust like the parallel compression knob to get parallel compression in. So it's like super simple. Like our setup is extremely simple.
How many rooms do you guys have?
The studio, it's a lounge, and then it's a control room and a live room. So
like when you and Matt are going at it, like are you guys in the same room the whole time?
Matt will typically be like, so we have a really cool dynamic. It'll be like, so there's like two different kinds, or I guess there's like three different kinds of days. There's like writing days, which are like the majority of our days. Like we write a ton of songs and we record them as we write them. So like a lot of because again, yeah, I just feel like a lot of like the excitement and stuff of like, oh wow, this song is really cool. Like let's just record the vocals for real right now. Cool. Like a lot of like that quote pre-pro writing stuff we do like actually like ends up on the record, just like because when we try to redo it, we can't really beat what we had originally.
Yeah.
So there'll be like a writing day where like it'll either be like John's running the writing session and I'm running the computer and John's writing and I'm like programming and like building up a track, and then Matt will be like in the lounge on his laptop like programming either another song or working on the same song that we're doing, and then like he'll like keep coming in and like giving me files and stuff, and like we're just like building this like crazy track pretty much. Then there's days where we're like actually recording bands, which that will be like Matt and me just like in the control room, just like tag teaming it, just like coming up with guitar parts, getting cool tones, programming cool stuff. So we work together on that. And then there's like days where we finish songs, or days where we like produce songs on our own, or just like mix songs where there's not a band in the studio. And for those days, it'll be like I'll do some editing on the main rig, and Matt will do some programming on his laptop, and then he'll give me the programming that he has, and then I'll start to mix the song, and I'll look at what Matt did, and I'll say, okay, this is cool, like give me something like this, or give me this, and then I'll do my own programming on the song, and then like I'll mix it. So it's all like a really like collaborative effort, but we're constantly basically just bouncing ideas back and forth. And sometimes we're in the same room and sometimes we're not.
How often is John there?
John's there a lot. It depends. If there's a band there, he's very vocal centric. So he records like 95% of the vocals, I would say. I record vocals too, but it just, he records a lot of the vocals like when he's writing. So that's mainly when John's there is when he's doing vocals. And, but Matt and me pretty much produce and mix and do everything else on our own. So John pretty much writes the song. We'll like write the songs with the bands and do the vocals with them, and then it's off to us.
So when John is out doing things and touring or maybe playing shows or whatever, I think he's probably still does like some A&R stuff and whatnot, traveling.
Oh yeah.
How do you guys handle that, and what's the protocol for that?
We're just always working, and we're just constantly like texting back and forth with John and like sending voice memos back and forth to each other about things like, yeah, like whether John is there or not, like we're going to make the music happen pretty much. And like, even if he's not there, it's like kind of almost like he is there, because the studio is a guest house at his actual house. So like his house is on the same property. So a lot of the time, like, he's there. And to be honest, yeah, he doesn't tour that much anymore. He plays maybe like 20 shows a year or so. But he's very involved with just like taking meetings and like finding new bands and like, yeah, like A&R stuff like that. Like he's very involved with that kind of stuff. So if there's not a band in, or if we're just doing like guitars or drums or like making tracks and doing anything that's not vocal oriented, like John will be like around just like taking meetings, just like trying to get us really cool projects. And then at the same time, he'll be like, I'll be sending him songs, and he'll be jamming them in the car and like sending me notes. And then like he'll come home and he'll pop in the studio and like we'll chat and hang out, and he'll listen to what we're doing and give us suggestions and stuff. So he's kind of just all over the place, just like bouncing around. But I like it.
Sounds like you guys have a pretty well-oiled machine going on though.
Yeah, I would say that we do. It's pretty cool.
How close to the studio do you live?
I live with Matt actually, and we live like 20 minutes away. The studio is like just outside of Los Angeles. It's maybe like 30 minutes outside, and yeah, we're like right in LA pretty much.
Yeah, Zakk and I are together 24/7 basically. Studio, then back to the apartment, then back to the studio, just over and over.
Yeah.
What do you guys do to get away from it?
Well, something that's really cool. So when I started working out for John, I worked like 7 days a week, just like nonstop. And it was like gnarly. Like I once went like 8 months without a day off. Like it was just like crazy. But you know, I was cutting my teeth and I loved every second of it. And John would literally come to me and be like, dude, like you got to take a day off. Like, come on, you got to take a day off. And I'd just be like, nah, man, I'm good. But then, on the last 5 Seconds of Summer album we did, 5 Seconds of Summer's A&R guy, he's like the pinnacle of A&R people. You know, I think he's incredible at what he does. He's like amazing, and he's just super like straightforward. He's British, and he is just brutal. He is like absolutely the most brutal person I've ever met. He scares John, and that's very rare. But he came to the studio to take 2 meetings over the course of making that record, and in each meeting, you know, we played him like a ton of songs, and and he walked away from both meetings being super pumped. Like he usually doesn't make it through the first 10 seconds of a song, and the second meeting he made us play a song for him 3 times in a row, which he said is like unheard of. And John was just so pumped on that, and he was like, I'll give you like whatever you want. Like, what do you want? Like, you want a new car? Like, what do you want? And I was like, can we have weekends off? And he was like, yeah. so it's great now that, I mean, we'll still come in like, you know, a couple hours on, you know, if I'm like really feeling something, I'll come in on like a Saturday or Sunday to do it. Or like if we really need to do something, like John really needs us like to get it done. Like I have no issues working a weekend, but for the most part, we have Saturday and Sunday to kind of like relax. And then during the week, we pretty much don't sleep and just go like super hard at the studio. So that's been amazing.
Do you feel like the quality of your work has gone up since you've earned your weekend?
I do.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, for 100%.
Because the thing is, I always like look forward to Friday. It feels like kind of being in high school again, but like I always look forward to Friday because I'm like stoked to sleep in on Saturday and like go chill with my friends and stuff. And then I'm always stoked to like get back in on Monday because over the weekend I'm constantly just thinking about like what we're working on, and like I come up with ideas that I don't like. If I was just working 7 days a week, I don't know if I would have thought of the ideas that I think of like that come to me on a weekend.
You can't have creativity without some rest.
Yes, I agree. And I think the weekend is a luxury that not a lot of people get to have. So I'm really fortunate that I have it right now.
I just think you got to earn it, basically.
Yeah.
There comes a point where you can demand it like you did. And I just think that it takes proving yourself long enough to where you can just say, look, I need a day off or 2 days off a weekend, a story up front, and cool. No problem.
Yeah, it's been great. It's awesome. And I think it's good for John too. I think John likes it too because he's never really done that ever before. You know, he's just used to working 7 days a week, but now like the whole thing kind of just like stops over the weekend. And the thing is like labels take weekends off, and you know managers try to take weekends off a lot, like from my experience. So
yeah, they do.
I don't know, maybe not managers, but it's like it's like no one's working on the weekend anyway. So that's why it's a great thing. Like if I want to go catch up or something, like while no one's working, you know, I could go on a weekend. But otherwise, it's like just knowing that we don't work on weekends, and the bands love it too.
I mean, Joel is super strict with his hours with bands. Like,
oh yeah, I got bankers hours over here. They come in at 8 in the morning and I go home at 5 o'clock. Now I usually end up coming in early and staying later and working on weekends and all kinds of crazy hours. Like, you know, sometimes you got to come in at 11:30 at night and stay till 4 a.m. and then get up at 6 and repeat. But
yeah,
aside from that, I find most people are really receptive to it too. A lot of bands have made the comment, especially the LA bands that are used to coming in and starting at noon. When they come out here, they're like, dude, this is cool because like I can go home and watch the game, watch some TV, eat dinner, relax, then wake up, recharge, and come back to the studio. And
yeah,
I mean, it's not for everybody, but you know, when you're producing a record, you call the shots and everybody else deals with it.
Yeah. I think it's great.
Yeah, and when you're there too, they know it's go time. You know, the band's like, okay, we have, 8 or 10 hours and we got to get shit done. So
yeah, you can be super focused and go super hard. I mean, I'd rather go really hard for 8 hours and not move and take like maybe 1 15-minute food break or something like that than I would sit there and screw off all day and work every other hour. And,
I'm the opposite. I like to do
shit done.
30 minutes of work and an hour of break and just repeat that.
I get like periods of like intense brain activity and then it stops and I feel like the light bulb turned off and I need to kind of like I've just noticed that this is how I work. Like, yeah, so I'm more like Joey in that the light bulb turns on and it's like fucking great and then the light bulb burns out and you got to just kind of like stare at a wall or do something and then it
you guys got to come hang out with me, man. I even piss with a sense of urgency.
Oh well, there's a lot of urgency when the light bulb's going.
Absolutely,
it's like intense.
What's one of the most ridiculous requests from a band, if you've had any?
What do you think, Matt?
I think most of the ridiculous requests come from Feldman himself. Like when I first got there, it was like my first day and he was like, yo, So I really like the soy milk from Starbucks. So you're going to have to go down there. They're not going to sell it to you, but you're going to have to make them sell it to you. So get on that. And I'm just like...
Yeah, every intern's done that one. It's like you got to go to Starbucks and literally fight the Starbucks employee to like give you soy milk.
I feel like that's like the first test of like the senpai master. You go.
So how did you accomplish that task?
I remember he asked our intern Brian the other day. He was like, "Can you make my dog's breath smell better?" Just like stuff like that.
I love that.
I mean, yeah. In terms of bands, I don't think like. I guess the most ridiculous request would be like a singer asking to sound like Michael Jackson or something when they sound nothing like Michael Jackson. But I think for the most part, the bands are usually like pretty. I just feel like we've been super fortunate over the past like year and a half. We've just worked with like great bands and got along with all of them amazingly, and it's just been really smooth.
Yeah, fortunately, we live in a day and an age where like that kind of pompous rock star asshole attitude has gone away somewhat, you know, where we don't have to like deal with that, and everybody is kind and sweet, and like we all have, you know, we realize that there's a common goal, and like, you know, there's not the asshole asking for all red Skittles in the fucking bowl, you know.
They're not big enough to do that. No one will put up with it anymore.
Yeah, and so that's the kind of cool thing about all these bands is like, you know, that some of them are sizable, but yeah, it's
That's
not like
exactly
Van
what I was
Halen's
thinking.
coming in, you know.
Like, I honestly feel like when I worked with like smaller local bands like years ago, there was more of rock star attitude than there is with like bands All Time Low or 5 Seconds of Summer or something. It's like I don't know why that is, but it's so weird to me.
I think it's because we've identified this before. It's like, you know, the local guy who's known for being like really good at drums or something. If that ever goes away, it's pretty much all he has. So they like guard it as if it's, you know, I'm the best and no one can touch me.
Not just that. Also, all they know about the reality of the music industry is zero. I mean, they've seen what they see on YouTube or documentaries, which are always bullshit, and that's their impression of how stuff works. So they go to a studio and expect that it's going to be how they've seen it with their favorite bands, and just have no idea that, first of all, it doesn't actually work like you see it in those documentaries, and second of all, you're not Pantera.
Yeah, so exactly.
We have some questions from the audience, and then I have a question that I want to ask after that. So is that cool if we jump into those?
Yeah, for
absolutely.
Sure.
Okay, so let's see here. First question is from subscriber Nathan. I love the way the guitars sound on Weird Kids by We Are the In Crowd. What was his work on that?
Okay. Weird Kids was... All right, so we have like a stack of boutique amps at the studio. We have like a Bad Cat, a Soldano, Matt's EVH 5153, which is awesome, a High Watt, and...
A Hughes and Kettner.
A Hughes and Kettner. Weird Kids was... The rhythms were... I think they were all Bad Cat, which is awesome. That amp is like super spongy. The rhythms were Bad Cat, and then the leads were Soldano. That's like my go-to like lead guitar amp. And they go through like this old Marshall cab that John used to tour with that has vintage 30s in it, and it's just like super like beat up and old. And then it's through like John's famous mic position, which is the old school Shure Beta 57. On one speaker, and then a Shure KSM 32, which is, I don't know why he uses that on guitar, but it sounds really good. And that's just tucked underneath the Beta 57. And so then that goes into Pro Tools, and those two signals get blended together. And then the EQ that we do on guitars for that record was the Waves SSL, just like pretty much cranking up the 8K like to wherever it sounds good and doing anything else you need. And then the Renaissance Axe just to compress it, and that's it.
John Unread is asking two-part question. How do you typically pan your overheads and drum room mics relative to the guitars in the mix? And how tightly edited was Singularity?
Okay, so overheads in rooms, I pretty much just always do 100% either way. And then Singularity, that North Lane album, That was a while. Yeah, that was when I was working for Will Putney. That was a while ago. Will doesn't. We grid the drums and stuff, but guitar wise, like Will doesn't edit guitars. We just like track them and until they're good enough. So I guess the drums were really tightly edited, but the guitars were not.
And that must take a while.
Yeah, I think the way Will tracks guitars, which I think is really cool, is he uses Logic, and Logic is amazing with looping things. So he just like loops a section over and over till they get it right, which I think that's a really cool way to do things.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially for like extreme metal.
Well, yeah, because they'll get it right like time number 14 out of 28.
Yeah.
So
Just play it for
well,
them.
yeah. But even if I was playing it for them, sometimes it'll be like that, just like, because you got to get into the flow of it. And then once you're in the flow of it, then you start to get the tone of it. And then
I'm hearing a lot of excuses.
I don't know. That's worked for me.
Yeah, that makes sense, EYAL. Yeah, I like that way. That's cool.
Rushi is asking, did Stick to Your Guns come in with the crown as it was, or did you make it that way? I really like the long melodic part going into that simple but really effective breakdown. I was wondering if it was the producer's choice or if it was already written that way.
I think a lot of the music to that song was written, which is strange. I could talk about this later, but John usually does vocals first before anything. But yeah, Stick to Your Guns, that a lot of the music was written to that, and then yeah, John just like worked on the vocals pretty much. So yeah, that was a production thing.
All right. So James Casper is asking, how do you handle ultra high pitched vocals like Kellen Quinn? Do you use a lot of low harmonies and or backing vocals to achieve a thick vocal sound?
For any like harsh vocalist or like just something, or I don't want to say harsh, but anything that's just like really high that might have some undesirable frequencies, I'll use the UAD. I think it's the ART 102 or 202 tape machine to smooth it out a little bit. And then I'll do like a little bit of surgical EQ like on the high frequencies, and then I'll do a lot of de-essing. Like sometimes I'll have like 3 de-essers going, and sometimes I'll actually like just go down and like adjust the gain of like each S if like the S's are too gnarly and stuff. So it's pretty much just finding ways to warm it up like that.
Okay. And
awesome.
Someone was asking which DAW you use, but you use Pro Tools. I know that.
So I have one question.
Okay.
Have you heard the Secret Attack album?
I have. Yes.
I want to hear it.
Or actually, I think I've only heard. It's funny that you mentioned that because we were looking for that last week for like some publishing thing, but I think I've heard like 2 songs. It's really cool. It's like really poppy but really heavy. But yeah, I haven't heard the whole album, but yeah, I've heard some of it.
That happened right after me. Like they worked with me, and then the next thing they did is they did that whole album with Feldman. I was like,
oh really?
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, I want to hear, what's the big deal? It never came out.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know. I guess it happens.
Oh, did the band like explode or implode?
No, yeah, the band imploded, but also I don't think that they were ready to take that step. Which
got it.
Yeah, if you've heard the songs,
it's scary.
Yeah, if you've heard the songs, then it's probably a little bit more in that commercial vein.
Yeah. There's definitely like choruses and simple structures and stuff. If it's a Feldman production, it's I don't know, bands, I think that's the most important thing of when bands come in to me. The number one most important thing is to be open-minded, because a lot of bands come in and they're like really scared, because John likes to, in general, he just likes to push things really hard in his life. And with bands, he just loves to push a band like as far out of their box as they can go until they start really screaming that we need to take it back a little bit. And that's like one of his secrets to making great records, I think. And a lot of bands are really scared to go outside the box and experiment and do
I think you
songs
gotta do
that are
that.
like completely different. Oh, no, yeah, I think it's crucial. And I think just being open-minded to anything and just giving everything a shot and just like seeing what happens is crucial. And I think that's what makes some bands last for a long time,
Yeah.
and some bands just kind of die.
I had a vocalist for Miss May I come in and kind of tell me like, all right, this is pretty much my vocal range. This is as high as I can sing, and this is as low as I can sing, etc. And, I'll be writing a melody and it just needs that one note that he can't hit.
Yeah,
You know, it needs to go up there, man. And he's like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can do it. I'm like, you're gonna do it. Because you gotta branch out, and 6 months later he's on the road and he's sending me little cell phone videos of him hitting those notes live and going, thanks so much, dude, for pushing me, because I do this every night now and it's awesome.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I just saw them this past week and they're great.
Yeah, I gotta say that just to wrap this back to what we were talking about earlier, that by having, we were talking about starting points and templates and all that stuff, having that stuff taken care of to where you can just get to work is what will allow you to experiment and push bands when you're on the clock and under the gun, and you have to get shit done and a lot of it done. That having all the dumb stuff just taken care of is what will give you the time to even start to be creative.
Yeah. I think another way that comes into play is like, so when, say, like a band comes in for a day and they write a song, it's like John will like go outside and do his yard and walk around for like a half an hour with his acoustic guitar, and then he'll come back in with like a chorus that is usually, and if the band loves it, then we'll go with that and work from there. And if they don't like it, then he'll go come up with something else. But once he has that chorus, he basically goes to me, like, make it sound like a hit in like 5 minutes so that the band gets stoked. Because like some people don't realize how good a song is until they hear it, like, fully realized. And just being able, like, when you have like such a short time with a band and just being able to like get your ideas out quickly is crucial. So that's how starting points come into play.
Well, thanks, dudes, for coming on. You guys are great guests and great people, and everyone should aspire to be like you.
Oh, thanks, man.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure.
But actually, no, congrats on everything that you guys have accomplished, and kick ass. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, man.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The Unstoppable Recording Machine podcast is brought to you by Ibanez Guitars and Basses. Ibanez strives to make high-quality, cutting-edge musical instruments that any musician can afford and enjoy. Visit Ibanez.com for more info. To ask us questions, make suggestions, and interact, visit urm.academy/podcast and me/podcast and me/podcast and